Great. So again, thank you all for joining me today for the National School Lunch Program Equipment Assistance Grant informational webinar. As background, the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2020 authorized grants to the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, Division of Health and Wellness, for providing equipment assistance to school food authorities participating in the National School Lunch Program. For this year, the District of Columbia was awarded funding in the amount of $68,306. The Equipment Assistant Grant funds can be a significant asset by allowing the purchase of capital equipment used to serve healthier meals, meet the nutritional standards with an emphasis on more fresh fruits and vegetables in school meals, to improve food safety and expand accessibility to food services. Equipment requests may include new equipment, renovation of equipment, or replacement of equipment. So who is eligible for the grant? Eligibility is participants of the National School Lunch Program who are eligible District of Columbia Public Schools, nonprofit private schools located in the District of Columbia, and public charter school campuses that are chartered by the District of Columbia Public Charter School Board. One note, as in years past, SFAs who are applying for multiple campuses must submit a separate application in EGMS for each campus that you're applying for. When you're actually in and submitting the application, you do this by using the Create Sub-Project button when you're creating your application. And awards will be made at the campus level, not the SFA level. In order to make the most effective use of grant funds, equipment requests must address at least one of the following focus areas identified by USDA. The first is equipment that lends itself to improving the quality of school food service meals that meet the dietary guidelines. Second is equipment that improves the safety of food served in the school meal programs. Third is equipment that improves the overall energy efficiency of the school food service operation. Fourth is equipment that allows sponsors to support expanded participation in a school meal program. And finally, equipment that aids in strategies for adopting smarter lunchrooms. For this grant, for the purpose of this grant, equipment means non-expendable, tangible personal property with a useful life of more than 1 year and a per unit acquisition cost of $1,000 or greater. Again, new equipment, renovation, or replacement of current equipment. Due to the $1,000 threshold, smallware items such as trays and plates, utensils, pans, and containers will not be considered for this grant. Allowable costs include the cost of the equipment, as well as taxes and any installation costs associated with the equipment purchased through the grant. The following are examples of allowable equipment that meet the focus areas of the grant, but of course this list is not exhaustive. If you have any specific questions, please reach out to me directly and we can talk through it. First are things such as portable kiosks for remote point of service or grab and go, rolling milk coolers, rolling hot or cold storage units, refrigerators, freezers, combi ovens, tilt skillets, and hot or cold food service lines. For this grant, the grant period will end on September 30th, 2022, and all funds must be obligated before this date. Funds will be distributed through a competitive process that's fair and equitable. Please note that grant requests may not be fully funded and may be approved for partial funding. Again, the total funding available for this year's grant is $68,306. The minimum award amount is $1,000 and the maximum award amount is $15,000. OSSE anticipates making 6 to 8 awards in this competition. An applicant may request funds for more than one piece of equipment, but the total funding request for any one application must not exceed $15,000. Again, meaning that an application for each campus cannot exceed $15,000 because the applications are based on the campus and not the SFA as a whole. If multiple pieces of equipment are requested, an applicant will be asked to rank the requested equipment according to need within the grant application. The purpose of this ranking is to assist OSSI in determining which equipment request to support if an application is partially funded. If you have received the award before, you're familiar with the continuation funding process. So again, all awards are made for a period of up to 2 years as defined by the grant period. However, if all funds are not expended by the end of the first fiscal year, which is September 30th, 2021, applicants awarded funds are required to complete and submit a continuation application prior to be awarded the funds in year 2. The continuation application will be available through OSSI's EGMS system, and on this process will be communicated to recipients directly prior to the end of the program period. As with all continuation grants with OSSI, the continuation grant is contingent upon the availability of funds, the subrecipient completing closeout for the first year, compliance with all district and federal laws, operation of the program as submitted in the application, as well as the completion of the continuation grant application. Schools awarded grant funds are required to submit supporting documentation when submitting for reimbursement through the grant. This can include things such as signed confirmation of adherence to procurement rules and documents within the reimbursement request itself, submission of invoices detailing the items that were purchased, including installation and taxes, the date the equipment was installed, and any reporting requirements prescribed by USDA. Per USDA, OSSI submits quarterly reports regarding the grant, and we may reach out to you to ask information such as the type of equipment purchased in the previous quarter, accomplishments and challenges in expenditure activities, the impact of purchased equipment on your school food service operation, reason for any unliquidated funds, and any potential return of equipment. Again, please note these reporting requirements specifically are something OSSI would reach out to you to receive. It's not something that you're required to submit through EGMS. The final reporting requirement, which is new for the fiscal year 2021 grant, is that grantees are required to complete an NSLP equipment grant report, first within 30 days of the award date, and again at the end of the grant period. And the report will collect the following 2 pieces of information. First is the alternative serving models that are being used for each meal served. And the second is the number of meals served during a time frame that we'll specify once we send the report out. Submission requirements. All applications must be submitted through EGMS. Please note that 3 quotes are required for each piece of equipment that you request. So there is supporting documentation required within the application. Please remember, as with all grants, to agree to and save assurances in central data before submitting the application. And if you have any questions on EGMS or run into any technical troubles with the application itself, please reach out to the OSSI EGMS Help Desk directly, and they're available Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And please note, no paper applications will be accepted. Again, all applications must be submitted through EGMS. Grants will be reviewed and scored by an external peer review panel, as this is a competitive grant. In addition, the Division of Health and Wellness is providing a competitive preference to DC public schools and public charter schools who meet the following criteria. First, those who have not received an NSLP Equipment Assistance Grant in the previous 3 years, and those who either earned a 1 or 2 star on the DC STAR framework or are purchasing equipment that supports providing meals in a non-traditional setting to expand accessibility to food service. So again, for this competitive preference, you must meet the first criteria of having not received an equipment assistance grant in the previous 3 years and either earned a star 1 or 2 rating on the STAR framework or are purchasing equipment that supports providing meals in a non-traditional setting. And OSSI intends to award at least 50% of funds to applications from the OSSI competitive preference schools. This is a reimbursement grant, and all reimbursement requests must be submitted through EGMS and include supporting documentation. These are the important dates for the grant. The grant opened on October 26th. Next Tuesday, November 10th at 3 p.m., the pre-application question period ends. So after this time, specific questions related to the grant will not be able to be answered. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly before that time. On November 17th, we will be publishing an FAQ document on the OSSI website that will include frequently asked questions from prior years, as well as every question that was asked related to this specific iteration of the grant. December 4th at 3 p.m. is the application deadline in EGMS. We anticipate sending award notices in January of 2021, and the grant period will end on September 30th, 2022. So now I'm going to open it up to any questions that you guys may have. I don't see anything in the chat right now, but I'll stay on if anybody has questions that they'd like to ask. Great question. So if your SFA has multiple campuses, you will be submitting a separate grant application for each campus. Reason being, because this grant is awarded at the campus level and not the SFA level, we need to have a different application for each campus that you're applying for. So you would then be submitting 3 separate applications to cover each campus. So in terms of eligibility, you had to have been a school food authority participating in National School Lunch Program in school year 1920 to be eligible for this grant. Great question on the 3-year requirement, or 3 years when it comes to the competitive preference. Because this is fiscal year 2021, if you received a grant in FY 2020, 2019, or 2018, you would not meet the competitive preference. Therefore, the OSSI fiscal year, if you received a grant in OSSI's fiscal year 2017 grant or prior, you would be eligible for that competitive preference.
Hi, I have a quick question. I'm Gloria. So would vendors who are awarded the grant need to subcontract any percentage of the award to local DC businesses?
No, and to clarify, so only school food authorities are eligible. Vendors themselves are not eligible.
Okay.
Does that help answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay. Good question in regards to campus and not by school. If you have schools that are on one campus, let me look into that and get back to you specifically, because I haven't run into that before and I want to make sure that I get you the correct answer. So I'll reach out to you directly. And then again, any questions that are asked here today or anybody that I need to follow up with, all the questions and answers will be posted on the document that's being published on the website on November 17th. So everyone will get to see the answer to that question as well. Good question. So the award period in regards to if you purchase equipment in December of 2020, but the grant is not awarded until January 2021, The grant period does not start until the award is actually made and the GAN, you receive your GAN. So you would not receive the GAN, and the period for this grant would not begin until that time, which we anticipate to be in January. So any equipment that you purchase prior to that GAN being available would not be eligible for reimbursement through the grant. So if you're thinking of purchasing equipment and you want to apply through the grant to purchase that equipment, you would want to wait until you find out if you were awarded the grant or not to purchase the equipment, because again, until you're actually awarded the grant, your period of the grant period would not begin. Good question on what a previous applicant is. The previous applicant is based on the campus, not the SFA as a whole. So if your SFA has 5 campuses and campus A has received the grant before, campuses B through D would still be considered new applicants for this competitive, for this competition of the grant. Sure. So great question on what providing meals in a non-traditional setting would be. What we're thinking about with that is kind of there's different things. So it could be as USDA defines it. Let me see if I can go back to their example here. So they say non-traditional setting, this doesn't have a good example, but we're thinking things like right now, let's say if you are providing meals grab and go and you're providing those at the front of your school because the school itself is not open or the cafeteria is not where you're serving the meals out of, you would be able to purchase equipment to support providing meals in that space. What this could look like if schools were operating would be supporting equipment for things like breakfast in the classroom, again, grab and go carts. I think right now with the situation that we're in, what this means in terms of providing meals in a non-traditional setting could look very different this year. So again, some of the examples that we thought through were things like rolling milk coolers, rolling hot or cold storage units. So if you need to bring food from the cafeteria, again, to the front of the school or even outdoors for meal pickups, that you could purchase equipment that would support that. Sure, no problem. And again, if you have specific equipment questions on specific pieces of equipment, please reach out to me, or you can ask them now. And if I don't have an answer right now, I'll get back to you, but happy to talk through this with anybody, because again, we know that this year, non-traditional setting looks a little bit different than it has in prior years. Yes, so for per unit, one cooler would be a unit. So another great example of this is you would not be able to purchase multiple pieces of equipment to meet the $1,000 threshold. So let's say you're thinking about a milk cooler. The milk cooler is only $500, but you're planning to purchase 2 of them, which would make it $1,000. That would not meet the definition of the grant because it has to be per unit. So just one of that item has to meet the $1,000 threshold. I believe I addressed all of the questions that have come through the chat already, but if I haven't, please feel free to either type in the chat or just chime in. And I'm going to scroll through right now and just double check. I don't see any other questions right now, but I'm going to stay on the line. If anybody does, feel free to, again, either keep typing them in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask directly. And thank you all for joining today.